Okay, we're good.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay. Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 318th meeting since we started in February of 2009. We put a different speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue, express a point of view. You must be for or against something. If anybody interrupts our speaker, remind the interrupter we listen only one fool at a time. It's one of our rules. And then we have questions and answers, not speeches, from the audience. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium to respond to the speaker said for or against. Their speaker gets the last word, gets a comment, to close the meeting. That's how it works. Tonight is a little different. It's supposed to be on why activism matters. Christy Lara called me this afternoon, was sick, called late tonight, and she has I think strep throat or laryngitis, one of the two, and she's not going to be able to speak here tonight and doesn't want to infect anybody else, so I told her, don't worry about it, we'll figure something out. Anyway, I talked to George here. He's willing to talk about, as long as we're going to talk about Bernie Sanders, he can talk about Bernie Sanders and there's activism and why that matters. So he can talk about that. And Jeff Staples there, he's for Hillary.
He's not feeling good.
Oh, he's not feeling, all right. Well,
He's had too much drugs.
Too much drug, all right.
Prescribed.
All right. So anyway, we'll put George on tonight. He'll talk about why activism matters, and he'll talk about Bernie. But before we put him on, are there any announcements? Now's the time for announcements. Anybody has announcements, come on up here and make them. No announcements? Just think, or are you thinking? Is he thinking? Are you thinking for announcements? You don't have no announcement, all right.
What convention?
What convention?
The Dallas, the Texas Democrats.
Texas Democrat. Is it gonna be in Dallas?
No, San Antonio.
Anyway, Memorial Day is next weekend. We will not have a meeting, just so you know. Don't show up here for one because there won't be one. June 4th, it shows here open, but it isn't. Kelvin Bluette announced that he would be a speaker on June 4th. I'm still waiting for his blurb, which you'll get on the internet, and I don't know what he's going to talk about, but he'll be for or against something, I'm sure. June 11th, we have Kurt Hyde. He's going to talk about do Texas elections need a paper trail all the way to the top. And June 18th, we have Jim Love. He's going to be our speaker. He's going to talk about, he worked as an engineer. He's 1914 to 2010. It's interesting. It's on your itinerary. I'm not going to read all this. Anyway, our speaker tonight is George Nolan. He's going to be speaking in place of Carrie Lara on why activism matters, and I think he's prepared for this. He's had about 10 minutes to prepare. So without further ado, please give a very, very warm welcome to George Nolan.
Well, I came tonight, I haven't been here for a while, because I wanted to hear Christy. Me and Christy Laura had been very involved in Occupy Dallas. As many of you may know, the Occupy movement started in New York, spread to all sorts of different cities, and when I became interested, I wanted to see what was going on with Occupy. So I took the light rail down, went down there, and they were camped at Pioneer Park at the time. In Pioneer, if you know that, it's where they got the steers and so forth, driving cattle through there. And they stayed there for a while. I was so impressed. They took me around and they took me through their encampment, and it was spotless. They had a place for kids. They had a library set up. They had a communication set up. And anyway, before the day was over, they said, "Do you want to march with us?" And I said, "Sure." Well, the Occupy movement, I learned so much from those people. And, oh, there's Hank back there. Hi, Hank.
Hey.
How you doing?
My celebrity?
Yeah. So anyway, I learned about Glass-Steagall, which I knew very little about that. That it happened in 1933. That was to keep the bankers and so forth from investing people's money here and there at the time, and it was to protect investments. In other words, Wall Street, like it is now or had been, would not be able to take people's money and just invest it. And so this worked for many, many years, and it wasn't, it happened during Bill Clinton's time, the end of Glass-Steagall. And the point with Glass-Steagall at the time, they decided that it would be good for the investors, the smart people that had decided they were going to Wall Street, the brilliant minds, they didn't want to go anywhere else because that's where the money was. It's like Willie Sutton, the reason he robbed banks is because that's where the money was. So anyway, when it finally happened that they reneged on Glass-Steagall, actually removed it. Our friend at the time, who was the head of the chair at that time?
Bill Bryan? You know about Phil Bryan?
No. Who is the head of the
Oh,
Fed? Yeah. Yeah, Alan Greenspan. He was one of the promoters. He thought it was the greatest thing that ever happened. And anyway, we saw what happened in 2008 and 2007. In those years, I was in New Zealand. I lived from 2006 to 2008 in New Zealand, and my 401k plan, I had taken it from the company, put it into mutual funds and so forth, and I was really doing well, I thought, for my future. And then I watched everything happening as they packaged these worthless loans, and they packaged them up and sold them from Wall Street. And I watched while I was over in New Zealand, they were paying at the time, some of the financial institutions were paying something like 7%. I was almost going to take my money out of here, put it in New Zealand. I'm glad I didn't. Because what happened was I started watching these financial institutions that had been buying these worthless package deals that was rated as AAA fold, one by one by one. And I immediately put everything I had in the money market. So anyway, I learned about Glass-Steagall from the Occupy movement. And I marched with Occupy because I believed what they were doing. We wouldn't even be talking about the 99% and the 1% if it hadn't been for the Occupy movement. But they were not a political movement at all. They wanted to stay out of politics, be nonpartisan. I thought it was a mistake, but we had people that were Tea Partiers and people that were right-wingers and left-wingers, but we had a lot of disturbed people in this country, and we still have. But they showed people that we had a problem. And the problem, activism, like Christie, I was very active with Christie, and that's why I came tonight, because I hadn't seen Christie since probably the Occupy movement and when it ended. But the idea is you can't kill an idea. You can stop them. I remember the day that the Occupy camp was behind City Hall. They were there, and they had a lot of plants that were put in there by the police department of Dallas. And I remember that night they had helicopters in the air, They had horses, about 40 mounted horsemen that came in there and tore apart the camp. They had given them a warning they were going to end it, but I didn't think they were going to end it that way. And I went down there, but it was amazing. They stopped it in Seattle, New York, every city at the same time. It was a coordinated effort. But I believe to this day that, thank God, that you can't kill an idea. That the idea of the 99%, when we can see that most of the wealth in this country is going to the top 1%, it's ridiculous. We have never had this disparity since the Great Depression. Just before the Great Depression, we had this. It was going on at that time, and they had very little regulations on Wall Street or anything else, and then we had the crash of '29. It's almost like if we do not do something about this, we are going to have a lot of problems. And that's where I come in with my man, Bernie. As you notice, I have the t-shirt. I was all prepared for it today. And so anyway, today, before I got here, we had a pre-convention meeting with Senatorial District 2 out in Rockwall today. It got so boring, I had my other Bernie shirt on. Has anybody found my Bernie hat? I lost it a long time ago. No, I know, but I do have the cup that says "Feel the Burn." And I think my wife dropped it because the handle's now broken.
She threw it at you.
No, she
Hot
didn't.
coffee in it.
With hot coffee in it. But the thing is that one of the things I brought tonight, and I brought Senator Bernie Sanders' Agenda for America, 12 Steps Forward. And I'd like you to read a few of these things. I brought it tonight because being Christie was going to talk about Bernie, I was going to have a little bit to say myself. He's got number one, rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure. We need a major investment to repair our crumbling infrastructure, roads, bridges, water systems, wastewater plants, airports, railroads, and schools. It's been estimated the cost of the Bush-Cheney-Iraq war we should have never waged will total $3 trillion by the time the last veteran receives needed care. A $1 trillion investment in infrastructure could create 13 million decent paying jobs and make this country more efficient and productive. We need to invest in infrastructure, not more war. Reversing climate change. The United States must lead the world in reversing climate change and make certain that this planet is habitable for our children and grandchildren. We must transform our energy system away from fossil fuels and into energy efficient and sustainable energies. Millions of homes and buildings need to be weatherized. Our transportation system needs to be energy efficient, and we need to greatly accelerate the progress we have already seen in wind, solar, geothermal, biomass, and other forms of sustainable energy. Transforming our energy system will not only protect the environment, it will create good-paying jobs. And that's what we need. Create worker co-ops. We need to develop new economic models to increase job creation and productivity. Instead of giving huge tax breaks to corporations which ship our jobs to China and other low-wage countries, we need to provide assistance to workers who want to pursue their own business by establishing worker-owned cooperatives. Study after study shows when workers have the ownership stake in the business they work for, productivity goes up, absenteeism goes down, and employees are more satisfied with their jobs. I am an old Braniff man. And this came when when American and the major people decided to put us down. There was a movement at our company to become employee-owned. But most of us, being we were making $14 an hour at the time and raising kids, couldn't quite afford to do what we did, and it was a short period of time, and our fate was already put there. We had a guy that came to our company, and later on his name was Putnam. He came as president. We met, and we watched the Beach Boys sing at this big thing, and he told us how good we were doing and that we'd be there for the longest time. 2 months later, we declared bankruptcy after we all took a 10% cut. Okay, growing trade union movement. Union workers who are able to collectively bargain for higher wages and benefits earn substantially more than non-union workers. Today, corporate opposition to union organizing makes it extremely difficult for workers to join unions. We need legislation which makes it clear that when a majority of the workers sign cards in support of a union, they can form a union. And I think this, when I first went to work for Braniff, 37% of the private industry in the United States was union. Now, it's about 6%. It's about 6%, and we've seen different companies decide they weren't going to pay pension benefits or anything else. So the worker is taking the brunt of about everything we can think of. Okay, raising the minimum wage. The current federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour, is a starvation wage. We need to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. No one in this country who works 40 hours a week should live in poverty. And Texas is one of the bigger states. Dallas County, more than 40% of the children live in poverty right here in Dallas County. And it's a shame. I know at the time, talking about activism, it was Black Friday 2011. I got involved in a CD. If those that have not done it before, I'm sure Jeffrey knows, but it's called Civil Disobedience. And we picketed Walmart and then at Box Springs. We picketed Walmart and then we blocked Lake June Road, 13 of us. And the police came out and said, please move off the street. And our response to them, which we had practiced, was we respectfully declined. And after the third time, they said, put your hands behind your back, and they cuffed us. And I could not believe that the Box Springs Police Department had that many handcuffs. And then I thought, oh gee, they probably went into Walmart and bought them. But I'll tell you one thing, Walmart, when they're finally starting to raise their wages to $15 an hour, I think it was not only activists right there in Box Springs, it was activists all across the country doing the same thing on Black Friday. And I believe that's why they have finally decided to raise the wages up to $15 an hour. And I think without activists like myself and many others, this wouldn't have happened. So sometimes people have to put their body on the line to or unless they just want to sit there and wonder what's going on. Okay, I've got to number 6 now. Pay equality for women workers. Women workers today earn 78 cents of what their male counterpart doing the same thing. We need to pay equality in our country, equal pay for equal work. And I think we're going to have to do this, and we should have done it a long time ago. And I don't understand why we're not doing it. Now we get to trade policies. I did a little talk a while back on the TPP, trade policy to benefit the American workers. Since 2001, we've lost more than 60,000 factories in this country and more than 4.9 million decent paying manufacturing jobs. We must end our disastrous trade policies, NAFTA, CAFTA, PNTR, with China, which enabled corporate America to shut down plants in this country and move to China and other low-wage countries. We need to end the race to the bottom and develop trade policies which demand American corporations create jobs here and not abroad. Now, they have told us that they have raised all sorts of jobs. It just doesn't happen to be in our country, the country that I love and have wore the uniform of. Okay, taking on Wall Street. The function of banking is to facilitate the flow of capital into productive and job-creating activities. Financial institutions cannot be an island unto themselves, standing as huge profit centers outside the real economy. Today, 6 huge Wall Street financial institutions have assets equivalent to 61% of our gross domestic product, over 9.8 trillion. These institutions underwrite more than half the mortgages in the country, more than 2/3 of the credit cards. The greed, recklessness, and illegal behavior of major Wall Street firms plunged this country into the worst financial crisis since the 1930s. They are too powerful to be reformed. They must be broken up. This is according to Bernie. And I agree with him. Health care as a right for all. The United States must join the rest of the industrialized world recognizing that health care is a right of all and not a privilege. Despite the fact that more than 40 million Americans have no health insurance, we spend almost twice as much per capita on health care as any other nation. We need to establish a Medicare for all single-payer system. All right, when I was sick for a while, near death, people had me written off, but I fooled them. And anyway, I came back. And the thing was, the last we call it action. Activism, we call it an action, was with TOP, Texas Organizing Project, TARA, which I am president of the Dallas chapter, Texas Alliance of Retired Americans, and some other groups. And we were on 183 underneath the billboard that said, Governor Abbott, please expand Medicaid. 25 Texans die per day because of the lack of insurance. And this state has, without a doubt, they refused to expand it, refused to take $10 billion from the federal government and insure people. It made it harder and harder. There's people that are in the gap that can't get any insurance because they're not low enough to get assistance, they're not high enough to qualify. So this is a thing that I certainly believe that has to be done. protecting most vulnerable Americans. This is me. Millions of seniors live in poverty, and we have the highest rate of childhood poverty as any major country, industrialized country, free country. We must strengthen the social safety net, not weaken it. Instead of cutting Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and nutritional programs, we should be expanding these programs. And I certainly agree with that. Number 12, real tax reform. At the time of massive wealth and income inequality, we need a progressive tax system in this country which is based on the ability to pay. It is not acceptable for major profitable corporations have paid nothing in federal income tax, and corporate CEOs in this country often enjoy effective tax rate which is lower than their secretaries. It is observed that we lose over $100 billion a year in revenue because corporations and the wealthy stash their cash offshore tax havens around the world. The time is overdue for real tax reform. And we noticed that the Panama Papers that came out a few months ago, the new president of Iceland finally had to resign. He had a lot of stuff stashed in Panama and other places that that was a tax haven for sheltering money. And we've got to stop this thing. And that's why I want us all to chant, Bernie, Bernie, burn. What happened? Jeffrey. Jeffrey. There you go, I like that. I got one out of here. But anyway, that's for off the top of my head tonight, being ill-prepared because Tom didn't tell me of the illness that has fallen upon our speaker. I courageously get up here to try my best. Thank you.
You've done a great job. Questions.
I get to answer, you can stay there and answer
Okay.
questions.
Well, how much time did I? Now, anybody else wants to talk, they certainly can come up here.
Yes,
Okay. Yes.
you mentioned back when you were at Braniff, somebody came in and talked about doing an ESOP or an employee stock
Right.
ownership program.
Right.
How involved did you get, into that, or
No, I didn't get involved that much. I had little or no money, being I had 2 children and a wife. At that time, you could have a wife and a couple of kids, and they didn't have to go to work, my wife.
remember what year that was?
Yes, that was 1982. That's when Braniff went under. Well, it was probably 81 and 82, the talk had come. Yeah.
Remember where the idea of the employee stock ownership program came from?
No, offhand, I don't.
There's a book called I'm sure you all know about the Communist Manifesto. Well, there's also a book called the Capitalist Manifesto. And that's where the idea came from.
Which one?
The Capitalist Manifesto.
Oh, okay.
Yes. I can't remember the fellow's name, but if you Google Capitalist Manifesto, it'll come up. But he and the senator from my home state, Senator Russell Long, sponsored a bill that went through Congress, and it sets up this employee stock ownership program. And there's several examples here in Dallas. One of them is Elliott, the old famous Elliott's Hardware store.
Mm-hmm.
That they were an ESOP, and it was a very successful store and grew, as you point out, because employees owned it. They had an interest, and they all pulled together. No, I don't think so. But I'm getting around to something. You know, we have a public utility here that's been split up into 3 pieces. and, you know, somebody tried to buy it and it didn't work. And I'm wondering why we couldn't have an ESOP, turn that into an ESOP where the employees owned it and, maybe some of the citizens. I mean, the ESOP is, the advantage is it gives, one of the things that drives it is it gives great tax advantages to the seller. But the question is, do you know of any unions that would be willing to put up the debt financing?
I don't know offhand, but I do know, I'm going to mention one company that just came into Garland, which I'm from, and it may be around different areas, is Winco. Winco is a grocery store that's employee-owned. And I remember when they had their grand opening or their grand month opening or whatever it was, my wife talked me into going over there. And I was so impressed by the employees, and I got up to the cashier, and she was so excited. She was working for Winco. She said, "I own part of this company." And she says, "They pay me well, our benefits are good, and I've never had a better job, and I've been a cashier for over 40 years. So I thought that was great.
It works for small to medium-sized companies, for sure.
Hey, George,
Yes,
you've outlined Bernie's plans quite well.
yeah.
Off the top of your head, what are Hillary's plans on a plan-to-plan, point-to-point basis, would you say?
Well, I'll put it this way. I am in the minority at the meeting today at State District 2 because we have 148 Hillary delegates going to San Antonio and we have 47 Bernie. But that's the way the vote went and it was proportional. But the thing is that I don't want to sit here and compare Hillary because Jeffrey's been a sick man and I don't want to make him any sicker.
Very compassionate.
Yes, Hank?
I got a couple of questions.
Okay.
Is this a free speech zone?
Yes. Hank, you're here, it has to be.
Well, where's the barbed wire?
Where's who?
The barbed wire and the police.
Right outside. Oh, we're outside.
That's a rhetorical question.
Okay.
Here's something actually I'd like an answer. What is activism aside from, being on your side?
Activism is where people actually get active in what they believe in. It's like civil disobedience. I knew I was going to get arrested, and at 73 years old, I was the oldest man in the Box Springs lockup that day. But I did have a friend of mine, Ed Middleton, which is a minister in Dallas, and he took care of my spiritual needs. So the 6 hours I spent there was in prayer.
Can you think about somebody who's not on your side and not in your thing, and how activism would apply to that? Because more general, more deep. In other words, there's the Tea Party. There's people like me.
Are you an activist?
Yeah, I was downtown today. But anyway, so I'm looking for a more common definition. You can't just say activism is when you get active. That's a little bit weak. Maybe something a little deeper.
Well, actually, I know we have some people here that are professors and so forth. I'm a high school dropout, so you'll have to sort of look at where I come from and what I'm able to speak in the way. No, I'm kidding with you. The point is, activism is getting out whatever cause you may have and become active with it, to actually promote it and perhaps put your body on the line for it. That's what I would call activism. I don't know what others would call it, but that's the type that I am. And, but I don't know whether that answers your question, Hank.
Well, okay, let me get a little more specific. The first way you said it sounded like if I went door to door in a totally mainstream way, trying to get out the vote, that would be active. That's active, and that's activism. But the second part of your answer led to risk and controversy. And how important is that in your definition?
I think when people go out and canvass from door to door for a political person, somebody that they believe in, that's activism too. But it's more like canvassing. I think when you go out and take the chance of getting ridiculed, I have been at different places where I've been called everything but a good guy for my participation in different actions. And I consider that activism. Now, everybody doesn't agree with me, and I know that, and that's okay.
May I interrupt you just a second? Just point out, what you're talking about is not simply activism. You're talking about something you actually said, but you're forgetting civil disobedience. Civil disobedience is when you put yourself in a position where you may be arrested as part of the protest activity. And that is the difference between, that's activism too, like canvassing for a candidate is activism, but civil disobedience, I think that's, what you're talking about is subsets of activism, not activism covers all of it.
I would agree with you, Jeffrey, yes, I would.
I was actually just repeating back what you said and forgotten you said it.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm getting a little old and a little shaky.
Okay, of those 13 points,
12.
12 points.
This is a 12-step program.
Okay, are you aware that every single one of those is in the Democratic Party platform, and that to one degree or another, that Hillary Clinton supports every single one of those things as well, despite Bernie's claims to the contrary?
I'll put it this way, until they have the convention, they don't have anything in the platform. They will do this at the Democratic convention. The Republicans just had their Republican convention in Dallas, and I haven't, which I will, look at their platform.
That stuff has been in the Democratic Party platform every time for many years.
Well, the way I understood it at the meeting today, there will be different committees set up to do different things, the platform committee, the resolution committee, this committee, and then I finally left.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But say, what I'm telling you is that in the 2012 platform, the 2008 platform, the 2004 platform, the 2000 platform, going back many years, the things that you're talking about have been in the Democratic Party platform, and they will continue to be in the Democratic platform. They would have been in the Democratic Party platform whether Bernie Sanders ran for president or not.
I guess I have to agree with you. Yes, John.
My name is John, and I'm an activist.
Bernie.
Now I have a 12-step program. It's not my 12-step program.
You can have it though.
But
That's good.
I can thank you for it. And George, I just have to comment that I love the fact that we actually agree on things like the TPP issue. That's really thrilling to be on opposite sides politically and yet still have the common sense to know that there are things that are not good for America.
Thank you. And that's true. Do you know, John, being that we had agreed, I wake up sometimes in a cold sweat at night screaming, John, I agree with John. I'll get over it though. I do have medication for that. Thank you.
I'm sure you will get over it eventually. It may take some time.
It will.
Eventually.
What do you think about Bernie's seriousness? Is he serious or not about auditing the Fed?
About what?
About auditing the Fed, since he has voted for and against it?
I don't know. I've never heard his position on auditing the Fed, and I follow Bernie pretty regularly. So, so I really have to ask Bernie. The last time I talked to Bernie, he told me to keep up the good work, George. You just want me to agree with you, John.
Well, I know that there's a lot of controversy over Michelle Obama's school lunch program and the items on the menu, off the menu. I want to know if Bernie gets in, is he going to have a school lunch program?
I certainly hope so, because as we know in Dallas, my daughter worked as a school counselor in Garland, and 86% of the children that went to that school were below the poverty line and got lunches at school. And now I hear that the opposition wants to stop that. He'll be coming up to you.
Greg, Tom, we got one.
Tax structure. Forefront, doing employment taxes, I have seen 25 employees live in poverty to save the company $40. How do you think things like this, as change is incremental, what do you think from what you've seen of Bernie and what you've been watching him do, what do you think would be his best approach to incrementally changing the tax structure for labor? Would it be organizing labor or changing the tax structure?
Well, organizing labor, what you're saying, to organize labor right now, and Tom can tell you this, many of the laws have been changed that used to protect labor. They have been taken off the books, and labor is at the mercy of the corporations. And we do not have a structure enough. If Tom would only start organizing again, but Tom's as old as I am, so we've got to leave it to somebody else. Yes, sir, John.
So, George, I can't imagine you getting up without speaking at least a little more about the demise of the unions and the reason why. Why are they such a low percentage of unionization?
I'll put it this way, because I think personally that some of our union leadership basically became the CEOs along with the CEOs of the different companies. And I believe that many of them are looking after their own self-interest and not the interest of the people that were in the union. That's my personal feeling. I ran for vice president of Braniff Local 2208, which was the IAM. I was the youngest negotiator at age 31 in 1973 when we had the price wage freeze with Nixon. And basically what they told me as I went in there was, shut up. That was my people, you know. And maybe they were right.
George, the third thing you mentioned here was worker co-ops. Could you explain a little more what that is? Are they similar to unions or dissimilar? Are they similar to Soviets or dissimilar?
I would say a co-op is like you were saying before, people that actually have an interest within it. I have a co-op in Garland. The Garland Power and Light is a co-op. I don't know actually how it works. I don't know whether we pay more or less, but pay more? Okay. So I really can't, I don't have a good, I could have studied this if I was given more than 7 minutes.
I'm asking this question of you, Tom Barry. You were a president of one of the largest unions, right, in the country? So you explain what happened to you.
What happened to the unions? Good question. A lot of corporations left town, went overseas. Every time a union asked for a wage increase, the corporation packed everything up and left. That's what happened to unions. And they lost their bargaining power because every time they asked for a raise, the corporation left town. So they lost their jobs. Then they got weaker that way. And every time they asked for something, then the membership says, why should I do anything for you? You don't get anything for us. So that's part of what happened to unions, in my view.
It was very good. Oh, don't give it to Jeffrey. Oh, go ahead, Jeffrey.
Looking at your list,
Yes.
I think if you were to go down that list, what you would notice is that, for example, the infrastructure jobs bill is a good example. Or alternative energy is another example, and there are others on that list. The extent to which progress has been made on those is inversely proportional to the number of Republicans in the Congress. Don't you agree?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Hey, now I agreed with Jeffrey too. I don't know what's happening to me.
I'm wondering how you can justify supporting a socialist and being anti-banker when the entire creation of socialism was done through support of the bankers. So it was actually their invention to create they actually invented it. Bankers invented socialism. And so
Very-
as a method of control.
Very interesting. I don't quite look at it that way, but it's very interesting, your concept of socialism. Socialism to me is Social Security, it's Medicare, it's what? What's that?
I'm in the way.
Oh. Hey, nobody wants my picture. Go ahead, John.
As an angry white man,
Yes.
apparently most of the working class angry white men voted for Reagan, one of the biggest disasters on the planet, and now they're voting for Trump. So how do you explain that your fellow angry white men always make the wrong decision?
You know, it's kind of funny that I happen to be not an angry white man. I'm sort of a happy old white guy. But I'll tell you what, when I go to places and confront people that I really feel need confronting, especially if they're Tea Partiers and so forth, I go in there and I got my USA shirt on. I got my red, white, and blue hat with USA on it. And I went in Forney, when Jeb Henseling, me and Tom went there, was having a talk there, you know, a town hall, and they sat me and Tom right up front, you know, because they didn't have chairs. And everybody was screaming, "Impeach Obama, impeach Obama," you know, and I'm just there waiting for my turn. And of course, then they said, "He wants to take our guns, he wants to take our guns." And those were angry old white men. And then finally I sitting up there on the stage, I waved my hand, and Jeb says, "Yes, sir." And I said, "My name is George Nolan." I gave where I lived and that I was one of his constituents. And then I came out with a question. I said, Congressman Henseling, you took an oath of office to protect and serve the Constitution of the United States. Was this superseded by your pledge not to raise taxes to Grover Norquist? And I'll tell you what, if he had a gun, I think he would have shot me. But you gotta be careful.
What was his answer?
Oh, his answer was, they had two chairmen, Republican chairman of the super committee, I called it the stupid committee. But his answer was, "Oh, we had it all on the table, we had everything." I said, "You didn't have nothing, you know?" And then I went out among the lovely people out there. I was waiting to be attacked, but I wasn't, to my dismay.
Is that it? I guess you get to sit down now.
I get to sit down. I don't think anybody wants to rebuttal me for doing this. No, go ahead.
Hey, try to be better prepared next time.
Good job, Nolan.
Okay, it's rebuttal time, so who wants to be first? You get to respond to what the speaker had to say, for or against. All right, whoever wants, come on up here. You got 5 minutes.
She's with me.
Okay, at the risk of this sounding like a funeral or memorial, I wanted to say that I'm really sorry and sad that Christy couldn't make it tonight. She's a warrior, and she and I were running buddies in Occupy. It was after the park thing. What I wanted to say, the primary thing is that we activists are our own worst enemies. And Hank, to your question, I think activism means taking action for change. So whatever change you think is important to make, you get out there, you don't just talk about it, you try to do something about it, and you don't try to just look busy. You look for things that can actually affect change, and then you do the hard things like George did and like a lot of other people in this room have done. You get thrown in jail, or you get in trouble, or you stir things up. I think unification is the hardest thing to find in activism, and I think that is the biggest problem we have, and I think we're making the job very easy for the power elites, because we can't seem to get our act together to agree, to compromise, and to take unified strategic action for anything. Our founding fathers had to compromise horribly. I mean, they all went home and had to take tongue lashings and probably worse from their constituents who hated some of the deals they agreed to, but they knew that if they didn't compromise, this country of ours, of theirs at the time, would not have happened. It would not exist today. They had to make compromises. And what I've seen over and over again among activists, and I am one also, John, I see ego, a lot of ego, and it tears people apart, even within groups that profess to agree to a point of view or an action that they want to take or a result they want to make happen. And they tear themselves apart before they ever even get to the firing line. When I was in Occupy with Christy, I brought in a plan to fire Congress. And I thought, this is perfect for Occupy, because Occupy doesn't want to take a stand. As you said, George, they don't want to be partisan. They didn't have to be partisan. My plan said, that if we fire everybody, good, bad, or indifferent, we tell them that votes matter more than money. And I knew that at the time that money was the big problem in Congress, in government. I just didn't know how far the money power went. I didn't know about the international bankers and the Fed at the time. But I thought if we could just fire Congress, just if somebody's in, send them out, vote somebody else in. And if there was an incumbent that was unchallenged, like Sam Johnson, never has an opponent because people think, well, I'm not going to spend any money to run against him because he's going to win and blah, blah, blah. If you have an uncontested race, don't vote in that race. And the thing that would happen is that future opponents would step forward. They would see that they have a chance because the last time Sam Johnson was voted in by 3 people, you know, his mom, his dad, and his wife, you know. And then they would be emboldened to go run. So the idea was if we fire Congress, everybody who's in will be out. Then we send what I call the ransom note to the newbies and say, okay, we want to get money out of campaigns, we want money out of taxation, we want money out of legislation and lobbying, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't make X progress, and we would set forward the goals, if you don't make that progress during your term, you're on the curb next time around, and somebody new's in getting a new ransom note. And it would take a while, but my belief was that the good people, and I'm thinking about people like Olympia Snowe, who got out of Congress. She was a brilliant senator who made a lot of meaningful compromises. And she got out because she said, it's too broken, I can't fix it from the inside. When I was with No Labels, I spent a lot of time in Washington, in the congressional offices, and you know, I had conversations with chiefs of staff who said, you know, my boss is getting out, it's too dirty, they can't make any real difference, it's all too much power and control from above. They really can't do what they came here to do. That's for the good ones, then there's the bad ones. So the whole plan was to fire Congress, and I thought because Occupy would go for it, and there were several people in Occupy that loved the idea for the same reasons that I thought. Well, then it started to fall apart because I smelled a little bit too much like a leader, and they didn't want leaders. They wanted consensus. And I said, fine, I don't want to lead this. I want us all to lead this. I want this to be all of our ideas. So if they've cut off my head, there's another 1,000, 10,000, 10 million heads who are going to rise up and bring this idea back to the fore. I don't need it to be my idea. I just want to fix things. Then I found that I was problematic because I didn't camp out at the park. So I wasn't a real Occupy person. So I didn't really have as much credibility as the rest of the Occupy folks. And then Christy and I happened to speak. We were attending a Move On meeting. I was also a member of Move On. So I was with Move On, Occupy, and No Labels at the time. And Christy and I both spoke different topics. I spoke about firing Congress. And at the next Occupy meeting, we were both chastised royally, me in particular, for speaking without their permission. And that was my last day in Occupy. I did not get their consensus approval, and I said, just because I'm with Occupy doesn't mean that I can't be myself and I can't be somebody else. I can't say things on other topics or things that you, Occupy, did not agree on through the whole leadership consensus mechanism. And that's only one example. Stuart and I have been involved in 9/11 activism. I've been involved in, like I said, Move On and No Labels and firing Congress and flat tax, and you guys have probably heard a lot of these from me over the years. And over again, we see division within the groups. And we start fighting over who's the boss and who has the most credibility, or who's the leader, or who started this, or who has done the most protests, or who's done the most this, or who camped out. And it makes me crazy, because I see that we're playing right into the hands of the power elite. We're doing their jobs for them. We're dividing ourselves so that we are not unified. I think we should all pick something that is reasonably okay. It doesn't have to be the greatest idea in the world, but say, yeah, it's a pretty good idea, I can live with that. And then just everybody run with it. And then the next time, if that doesn't work, then the next time somebody else has another idea that you think, it's okay too. Then everybody else goes over to that ship. Let's go run with that. But with us dividing up, and there's 3 people here doing that, and 2 people over there, and 5 people over here doing this, it's a joke. And it's very frustrating, and I think that we should all think about, those of us who are involved in activism, think about what we might be able to give up, like the Founding Fathers did. What horrible compromises might we be willing to make in order to put this country back together and get our rights and freedoms back?
Well, it's true, George and I have some running controversies. Even when he says he doesn't want my guns, I know George wants my guns. But then he says, no, it's just that 30-round clip. And so I asked Dex about it, and Dex and I agree. 30-round clips just get in the way. It's you take a 10-round clip, 2 of those, and you just clamp them together, and then you just switch as you need to. So, hey, works better that way. So maybe we agree on the 30-round clip. So that might be one other thing. I think the thing that we're seeing with Bernie, when the nation is feeling the burn, what is not really being discussed here is that Bernie is kind of an establishment outsider, and people are gravitating to establishment outsiders. And there's a good reason for that. Someone at some point said that politicians, and especially people as high up as presidents, is kind of like paper in the bottom of the bird cage. The bird's up there doing its business. That's the bureaucratic business as usual, coming from both parties. And whoever's in office is getting plopped on. The problem we have here with some of the candidates running, I think Jeb Bush was a good example of how no one wants another Bush in office. The problem is we have some used cage paper that really has not been cleaned, if you know what I mean. And a person would have to have cognitive dissonance to have any other view on that, in my humble opinion. It gets to a point where you could say you're factually challenged if you think that a candidate running who has basically been in the Oval Office before and arguably wore the pants in the Oval Office, that there could be any clean slate coming into this new administration. So if I can make a prediction, my prediction would be that the support for Bernie, if Hillary gets the nomination, I think you will see at least a very good percentage of Bernie's supporters going to Trump, who is another outsider. Because I think the American people have awoken to the fact that the business as usual is driving the USS Titanic to the bottom. It's very obvious. And how can you ignore the evidence in our lives? I mean, it's all around us. And the rate of the water rising, it's rising faster and faster, and I mean the deck is tilted, and the bow's down, and the stern's up in the air. And you know, when your head's in the sand, what's exposed?
I'm not a Bernie fan, not in the least. I'm more leaning towards Trump for some specific reasons. As an activist, I also am into wanting to spread 911 truth. Actually, Trump has actually called for it to be reinvestigated, so that's certainly a feather in his cap. He's also, like Bernie, he is against the TPP, the TTIP, all of those secret trade treaties. They both are also asking for the Fed to be audited. Bernie has, as well as Trump, except Bernie has voted against auditing the Fed. He's kind of betrayed the movement. It's important to get rid of the Federal Reserve. And if you know anything about how money works and how the banking industry is crooked, you'd want the Federal Reserve removed as well. It basically is the mechanism by which wars are funded, because anytime a government can just print money out of thin air, if they want to start a war, they got all the money they need to start it with. You know, starting a building project to rebuild infrastructure, any president can come up with that idea. We need something way more intelligent and inventive. Past presidents have rebuilt infrastructure. That's something a 2-year-old kid could come up with as an idea. We need somebody with a lot more business experience, and that's Trump. Trump has over 500 different businesses that he started in his career. Only 4 of them ever had to be bankrupted. With that kind of a track record of success, you've got somebody that knows what they're doing when it comes to helping business owners get back on their feet. He's also the only one left in the running that is anti-forced vaccination. In fact, Bernie came out and started calling kids potential killers because they don't get their vaccines. And so I'm not a big fan of Bernie for that, because it's kind of obvious when you see you dig into it and you look at the statistics on how many kids are becoming autistic. And it's not just autism, it's also allergies, it's all manner of illnesses. We're the most vaccinated country in the world, but we've got the worst health. We spend more money on health care, but we've got the worst health of any country that spends as much as we do. Also, Trump is very strong on the Second Amendment. Bernie is talking about if you can't hunt with that gun, he wants to take it away from you. And that's a recipe for a civil war, one in which Bernie doesn't survive. Bernie is toast anyway, because he's not going to get past Hillary. And we're in Texas anyway, so it doesn't matter, because it's pretty much a Republican state. But he is also the best anti-war choice. Putin, the Russian people, have all been big fans of Trump. Putin actually practically endorsed Trump. And if you're going to have a war with anybody, if you're worried about World War III, you'd probably be worried about Russia or China. And if they're endorsing the candidate, that's probably somebody that Putin thinks he can get along with, and it's not going to start a World War III. And he's a professional politician, and he would know better than just the average Joe on the street in America as to who would be somebody that we should worry about starting World War III. Hillary is very much in with the establishment. She's in with the Bushes. They are warmongers, they're neocons. She's just democratic version of the neocon. Socialism was invented by the bankers because it was invented with the communists, and the bankers invented communism. They funded the revolution out of Wall Street. They funded the communist revolution of Russia. And so with Trump, you don't have a politician that's getting money from Monsanto, Goldman Sachs, or selling uranium to the Russians like Hillary is doing. You don't have a guy that's going to be supportive of all the poisoning that's going on to try to limit lifespan on this planet that you're seeing the establishment try to force into our food, air, and water. You've got chemtrails, vaccines, fluoride, GMO, aspartame, and even prescription drugs that come out of the market, kill 100,000 people, then have to be taken off the market. These are all things that are a part of the establishments trying to control the masses. And when you vote for an establishment person like a Hillary Clinton, you're voting for somebody that's trying to exterminate a large portion of the human race. And so you're a part of that human race. They're against you. You're supporting your own murderer. And so I say vote for Trump so that you get those issues solved correctly.
Well, you know, we had some interesting, I think the speaker is very informative. And I think they're all three interesting speakers, interesting politicians, Bernie, Trump, and Hillary, that lady, yes. Then that Ted Cruz too, he had that weird face, kind of looked like a, I don't know, kind of looked like a Vulcan. Trump is, it really makes me sad for my country that this guy's been nominated. I don't like Hillary, but I really think Trump, it really has turned our country into a farce. I mean, he's a joke. But he's funny, but it just may not be funny to really give him power. I think to really give him a finger on the nuclear weapon. He's a bully and a narcissist. He's scary as hell, but I mean, nobody likes Hillary. I was seeing a poll that only 33% of men support Hillary right now. And when you think about that, since a huge percentage of those men are probably people, people of color, it means white men really hate Hillary in general. I think she just reminds you of a lot of people that have screwed you over in life. It reminds you of a lot of female bosses that just ruined your life. It reminds you of your ex-wife who ruined your life. Hillary, white men just seem to really hate Hillary, and there's maybe not a real reason for it. Hillary actually says the right things, but people just hate her anyway. Trump says the wrong things, and people love him anyways. But I don't know, Bernie's a cool guy. He's cool. I don't know if I really believe in that. I don't. He wants to turn America into Denmark. I think it's a cool idea, but I'm too much of a believer in capitalism. I believe in capitalism, but I think Bernie's a well-intentioned, weird old man. But I think I'm just a little scared of this Trump guy really winning. And unfortunately, I saw 2 polls showing him ahead, taken last Friday. So you have to say that this may really happen. And we'll just have to see. But Trump's main issue was immigration, which, I think it really sounds, this idea that you're basically going to move 11 million people, that's a major violation of people's human rights, I think, and I don't support that. I think Trump, Hillary is more the same, but Trump may be much worse than more the same. Trump I think we should really question but then, he hasn't really lived his life like a sociopath. Sometimes I think he just appeals to the stupid people. And, maybe he's not as crazy as he seems. I mean, he's never committed all these crimes and stuff. So maybe we'll not be as bad as it looks. But I don't know. I enjoy the speaker, and I appreciate her for coming out. So.
Who's the guy on your...
Oh,
Omar. I'd recognize him anywhere.
I like Bernie supporters, and I think you guys mean well, and I think you want to see some changes as a libertarian. But who I can't stand is Hillary. I think she's absolutely insane. However, that's not what I got up here to say. Right now, the United States is at war in 5 countries: Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. We have boots on the ground in Syria. We have boots on the ground, and CIA overthrowing Libya. Because that's 4, and we've got troops on the ground all over Africa. So I can't say technically, right? We've got troops, special forces troops all over the place. And Pat and I watched a movie called Dirty Wars. I really recommend everybody see it. It exposes the Republicans for who they really are. Dirty Wars. It also exposes the Democrat Party for who they are. Everybody here wants to live in peace. Everybody here in this room means well. We all want to hang out. We want to converse and disagree and have different opinions. We don't want to kill each other. We don't want to kill and bomb everybody, do we? No, we don't. But we're going to disagree and have different opinions. Now, we're at war in Afghanistan based on lies. The official story of 9/11 is that 19 hijackers with box cutters took over 4 planes and crashed 3 of them into their targets. There's no plane wreckage at the Pentagon.
Right. Agreed.
Okay, now, what I'm telling you, Democrats, is here is where you can destroy the GOP. The Republican Party could be wiped off the face of the earth if you went with 9/11 truth. The problem is the Democrats are just as guilty. LBJ lied us into wars in Vietnam with the Gulf of Tonkin conflict. Remember that? I had to write a paper on it when I was in like 2nd grade or 3rd grade or something at Armstrong Elementary over in Highland Park. Now, Obama and the Republicans are mad about Obamacare. Obama didn't write it. He's the puppet. Bush, George W. Bush, really? That's the best we can come up with? Okay.
Romney care.
Yeah, Romney Care was almost identically the same thing as Obamacare. The corporations wrote it. Obama didn't write anything. Now, I'll also say I'm more happy that Obama's president than McCain. We'd already be in World War III if John McCain was president. That's my personal opinion, but the U.S. government lied us into war in World War I, Democrat president. What got us launched into World War I? All the local people, all the Americans, 98%, 92%, whatever, did not want to go to a war in Europe. But Woodrow Wilson ran and promised he'd keep us out of a war in Europe. But the Lusitania takes off and it's sailing towards Europe full of military supplies for England because we were actually backing one side over the other. That gets torpedoed, that gets sunk, and it's blamed on those horrible Germans. We don't know who sank it. Could have been Germans, but off the war we go. America's outraged. Same thing with World War II. They had already the United States government had already broken the Japanese code. They already knew that attack was coming. That's why no aircraft carriers were there. Now we go to war there, and how many people died? Russians. 20 million people died. Russians died. They keep talking about the Holocaust, which is horrible, but they don't ever mention 20 million Russians that died. Okay. You know, I mean, come on. And Germans that fought against Hitler inside Germany that were murdered, hung, and shot at by a firing squad. LBJ lied us into war. The official story of John F. Kennedy's not true. We've been lied to over and over. It doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. They're all liars. Now, there's a handful of them that mean well. There's a handful of them. I think Bernie means well. I think Hillary Clinton is absolutely insane. That's just my opinion. But, okay. Now, that doesn't disrespect the veterans that served anywhere, okay? The veterans that served in World War II were heroes. They marched off the war to protect their country and end fascism. The problem is Hitler was funded in large part by American businesses.
Standard Oil.
Standard Oil, that's right. Had a additive to the Luftwaffe gasoline, kerosene, that they couldn't fly without.
Tetraethyl lead.
Right. So, we need to keep all this in mind as we're going to our booth to vote or whatever. Now, let me finish up with George W. Bush? Prescott, yeah, there you go. That's right. I forgot about Prescott Bush, who was a Nazi banker. There we go. Yeah, there's a whole bunch, okay? The Bush family are Nazis. They actually are. Imagine, okay, let me change a little bit here. Okay. Think about all those children that are playing in a schoolyard somewhere. Those kids that you hear in the restaurant here, the kids that you see at your church. The United States government has special ops forces in 75 countries right now launching drone attacks at supposed terrorists. But they're killing children and families that don't even know where America is on a map. Just tribal people minding their own business. And that's what America's become, an empire, a war machine, because it's profitable. And we, the people, allow it. George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld should be in prison. Bill Clinton should be in prison. He committed treason inside the White House. LBJ, we ought to dig him up and put charges on him. Okay, all right.
Is that allowed taking up?
Again, let me just, I'll shut up with, please rent, find, buy the movie Dirty Wars. It doesn't have a political perspective, right or left. It's just showing what the hell's really going on. See, because we get accused of being anti-Semites if we bring up something about Israel. Semite doesn't even mean Jew. Semite means someone living in the Middle East, in the Arab area, Saudi Arabia, Libya, Israel, Jordan. Those are people are Semites, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. But anytime you bring up and question anything like the involvement of Mossad in wiring the buildings 1, 2, and 7 in World Trade Center buildings 1, 2, and 7, they were arrested, they were released by the State Department. We're called anti-Semites. But see, the CIA's overthrown governments all over the world. That doesn't make every American bad. If Mossad pulled off and was involved in 9/11, doesn't make every Jew bad either. There are black kids that commit crimes. Doesn't make every black kid. I'd smoked pot and drove drunk and did all kinds of stupid stuff as a kid. Doesn't make every person with my level of melatonin in my skin a bad person, right? I mean, come on, we got to snap out of it. We got to wake up. We got to move forward with what do we the people really want. So, but instead, here's what we're doing. We're arguing over bathrooms. See how they play us? Just over and over and over again, just release some nonsense about bathrooms, you know. So, anyway, remember that right now the United States can't afford. We've spent trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, and another terrorist attack is going to come.
Yeah.
Always watch Never believe, ever believe what the government's telling you about it.
John, how about you?
What time is it?
No, you go first.
She wants you to go first.
She's gonna watch it this year.
Well,
Hank, that was very good.
Hey, what happened?
Hey,
Sit up here.
I'm next.
Yeah, they have me sit up here.
how did you get there and we'll let you be next from there?
Well, this is one of the most interesting and entertaining sessions we've had in a long time. I'm sorry we can see some of our principal rabble-rousers as have left early, but anyway. I do want to say that I think this bathroom thing indeed is a diversion, and it's a diversion from the growth in the last 6 months, the last 2 quarters of the economy has been less than 1%. That's a recession. The Obama extra burden that put on the economy, the bailout for the big banks and all the other stuff, has kept the recovery below 2%. That every 1% increase in the growth of the economy produces 1 million jobs per year. 1 million times 7 years is 7 million jobs that are gone forever. You can't go back and recoup them. So that's probably why this ridiculous thing about the bathrooms has come up, of which the federal government has absolutely no basis in the Constitution. That's a local municipal code issue. Now, the lady back here, the blonde lady in the black, Pat, I'm sorry, good. I thought you had a lot of good suggestions. I think maybe you're barking up the wrong tree. I think that you'd find there are many people that would agree with you. We need to put control on spending and replace Congress. But you're dealing with a totalitarian neighborhood where if you don't have their permission to speak, then you aren't allowed to speak. I'd like to recommend that you consider positing your ideas with people that are a little more tolerant and open-minded, like with the Concerned Women of America and the Tea Party. Thank you.
Well, I'm not a professional politician, but I gotta learn to filibuster, because I wasn't supposed to talk tomorrow. I got back from the bathroom. And I'm gonna have to start anyway. Well, okay, well, my experience with activism is pretty brief and not as intense as George's. I haven't been to jail yet, although I did get mad last weekend. What I learned when going to the city council when I wanted to talk about fluoride was how our public servants, not only do they not listen to you, in just the mayor and the city council, they don't let you ask questions. You cannot even ask them questions. It's like, whoa! First they limit you to 3 minutes, and then you can't even ask a question. So I kind of said, what's the definition of activism?
Looks like a fan.
Filibuster's over. What's the definition of activism? I'm going to concentrate on the civil disobedience side, like George was saying, things that are controversial. I'm not going to, and anything that Fox News or CNN or NBC approves of, that's not activism. That includes going, to Bernie rallies or Trump rallies or any of that stuff. That's all mainstream stuff. When you step out of the box a little bit, that is activism. That I'm going to, the way I'm talking about it, because I agree with Stewart. I mean, I could have got up here and just said whatever he said, because that was a pretty good speech. This thing about unpopular wars, and basically it's turning out, as we learn now, just about every war is really a central issue. That's so important, because tied into that is this brainwash that's getting very sophisticated. It has to do with the mainstream media. They say that we need to blow up Yemen or whoever, Baluchistan, we got to blow them up. We have to do that. Grenada. And people just, yeah, that's fine. Here, take my son. Oh, we can have my daughter now. Yeah, the women got more rights now. They can go on the front lines now. I'm so thrilled. It's really great. The thing that it ties to their brainwash is this: we are sold on the idea that America is special, and there is something special about the ideals of America. I mean, really, it has shaped the world in such a dramatic way, and for the better. I believe most of the propaganda that says it was better, but at the heart of that is that this is a representative government. When I go to the mayor or city council, they're supposed to be serving me, representing me somehow. It's the best they can do, since we have millions of people. And it's nothing like that. It's devolved to such a point, especially the wars are probably one of the things, that make it very clear. They don't care what we think. There is a power going on that is bigger, and it's exposed now on the internet. I don't know for how much longer. And so if you have the guts, or if you think a life worth living includes more than just choosing one side or the other that you don't agree with, really, you might consider activism. So I respect George for understanding that, and I don't really agree with the Bernie stuff that much, but he wants to be effective. I have not found something that's probably as effective, because they have such a big voice, but I have to stay true to what I understand, and it's kind of hard because they keep changing the field. So Pat and Stuart both brought up this thing about unity and being effective. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're not going to do it through the mainstream. So start by entertaining these ideas that are challenging your idea that everything is the way it was taught to us in grade school. A lot of that was propaganda, and it was made to make you toe the line, pay for the wars, and the roosters are coming home. So today I did something. I did a little activism, Monsanto. I don't know, I do what I can. I don't know what I'm going to do, but as far as going through direct channels, I've given up. I don't know if I'm even going to vote. So I don't know, something to think about.
Well, I was talking about the dirty birdcage paper, but I was really expecting Stu to delve into the Hillary issue more, and I guess I'm going to have to do it. Back in 1994, a good friend of mine who's passed on, John Seidler, was there for the first memorial service of the Branch Davidians, the surviving Davidians. And in '95, I ended up getting brought in on that, and I don't know exactly how many of the memorial services I've done, but I would recommend it to all good Americans to go find out from the people who suffered through that experience what they have to say about what happened there. And I think it's very important to understand what kind of regime we had running during that time in Washington, D.C. Barbara Olson wrote a book, Hell to Pay, about Hillary Clinton's penchant for getting back at those who slighted her, those who wronged her. And ironically, on September 11th, 2001, Barbara Olson had hell to pay. It makes you wonder. It really makes you wonder. So, there have been several different movies that have been made about, we'll call it Waco. It's actually Mount Carmel, but there was Waco Rules of Engagement, Waco A New Revelation. And as time went on, I met Mike McNulty, the producer, director of those fine pieces. I met him at the memorial services, met Ramsey Clark there, a number of other people who are activists, have been longstanding activists for human rights, and I want the Democrats here to really take it to heart. That was a hate crime. What happened on February 28, 1993, with the BATF raid was a hate crime. There were more people of color in that community than there were white folks. And you had the media spin to you that those were gun-toting right-wing extremists there at Mount Carmel. It was a church. It was a weird community. I think some of their beliefs I'm still going kind of wow about. I don't agree with their theology on everything, but I know they're sincere people. And the worst thing you can do with a cult situation like that is take out their leader, because those people are never going to, well, maybe it may take decades, but it's not likely they're ever going to really see his clay feet, David Koresh's clay feet, because of all of what happened. So we have that situation there where the media lied. Every one of those press conferences there with Bob Ricks, Jeff Jamar, lies. We got a daily treatment of lies. Finally, at one of the memorial services, we had the last negotiator, the last person who spoke to the Davidians. We had Ferris Rookstool come and admit that he was making progress, but then the military there, the supposed HURT team, that's short for hostage rescue, but it's probably more accurate, that they were undoing everything that he would, every time he'd make progress, they were undoing it by their actions. They're threatening of the people there, and the people there believed they'd be shot if they tried to leave, and it appears many of them were. So Ferris Rookstool came out and he said that unfortunately the tactical option was decided on. He was overruled. And what was the tactical option? We're finding that Delta Force was there. Members of Delta Force were there on that fateful day, April 19th, 1993. Why is Delta Force only goes there when they're commanded by the National Security, NSA, National Security Agency, or the executive branch? That's why Delta Force was there. I'm told Webb Hubble gave the order. When you send in Delta Force, they're not there to lose. They're there to win. Delta Force didn't lose one person. The Davidians lost about 80 people that day. So, who gave that order? I have it on very good authority that traces right back to she who wore the pants in the White House. Now, I don't have that in writing. I don't have it in hard copy. Maybe somebody does. But Larry Nichols believes it. Larry Nichols was with the Clintons in Arkansas. Larry Nichols got upset and went against Bill and Hillary, and they destroyed his career because he was getting upset at all the murders going on there in Arkansas. Stu was right. We all need to wake up. We all need to wake up. Last night, I was at a party I met a famous filmmaker at the party. He was filming us playing music. And dude by the name of Mickey Grant. He wasn't in really great health. He was actually going to take his equipment home and then go on to the hospital. So, you know, I wish him well that way, but what did Mickey Grant do? Mickey Grant was one of the key people there, journalists, video journalists, over there promoting the lie of what went on in Libya. The lie that was put forward by our American press. The lie of the moderate rebels who were going in there about, and, you know, this evil man Gaddafi. We had the opportunity here to have the Moriartys come and give their experience, and it's 180 degrees away from what Mickey Grant put out. And what I wanted to say to Mickey Grant, we found out we had a bunch of friends from the 70s yoga community. It was amazing how many people we knew in common. And I'm like, you know, I really want to visit with this guy and so forth. And then I'm kind of drawing back and I'm like, he's a producer, you know, a video journalist who got tens of thousands, 100,000 people killed by his propaganda. How much, I mean, the immediate thing that happened is once Gaddafi was taken out, then the folks who moved in there started murdering all the blacks. 30,000 blacks were murdered in Libya in the first few months of the takeover because those taking over were racist. And this is what I'm trying to get across to my liberal friends is, folks, there's stuff going on under the radar that you're not picking up on because of your bias. And we need to get over being factually challenged and really start digging on what's going on in all these different incidents. Stu brought up a lot of stuff, good stuff. And I could go on for a long time, but John's here, so.
Well, interesting. Well, John, as one of your libelous liberal friends, I'll have a few words to say. I've been in this country getting on nearly 50 years now, and it never ceases to amaze me. From a European viewpoint, you have two right-wing parties that are very, very similar. They're branded, anyone who disagrees is branded as a socialist, a liberal, a commie, so on and so forth. Most other countries in Europe have a much more, I'll say, a social outlook. That's to say, they care about the people of their country. They really do. What's happened in America is quite clear, I think. Gradually, the ruling elite has gradually got more and more power, and basically speaking, they don't really give a damn about the people, and they don't really give a damn about their country. It's quite evident. They masquerade as and parade the wonders of the capitalist system, but we do not have a capitalist system. We perhaps did at one point. Perhaps there was mom and pop stores. Perhaps there was competition. But go around America. Look at all these cities. You see chain store after chain store after chain store. Basically, you've got basically an oligopoly, and you have there's supposed to be the Sherman Act, antitrust laws. Well, when was that last enforced? All you see is wave after wave of consolidations, takeovers, and so on. So basically, you've got crony capitalism. And of course, as Tom has said many times, the thing that was feared when these corporations were chartered back in the late 19th century, they worried about this power, money power. And there were charters against it. But gradually, of course, you have this ridiculous Supreme Court that made corporations people. I mean, how more stupid could you ever be? I mean, you know, it's quite astounding what's going on. Now, as you know, I wrote my book, Sabotaging America. Well, basically, it talked about corporate power, how it gradually gained more power and more power. It took over the politics. It's taken over all the so-called free trade agreements. Basically, we don't have a free market, okay? And we don't have free trade. We have cartels, and they're just ripping people off. As we just discussed, their money does not come back to America. And I've said many times, the City of London is facilitator of the biggest rip-off system in the world. They in this tiny bits remaining of the British Empire, the Cayman Islands, etc., etc. I mean, they've got something like $20 trillion stashed away in these tax havens. It's amazing what's going on. It's total corruption, really. Now, the heartening thing is it's taken, George, 3 years ago, I gave a talk about economic democracy, and I said, look, the way it's going, America will be bought out. And I think you said it'll never happen. Well, it is happening. You can see it. You know, China owns now Waldorf Astoria. GE has sold off its appliance division. I mean, with that amount of money which is pouring back into America, they're gradually buying everything, real estate, businesses, and we don't know what they own in the stock market. But this country is slowly eating itself up. Now, so we don't have a capitalist system. I mean, it's nowhere near a capitalist system, and it's failing America. I mean, and this is what gradually, Joe Sixpack has slowly got off his chair looking at Monday night, Sunday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night football, etc., and realized that something's gone badly wrong. And so he's turning to idiots like Trump. Trump basically says, don't look in the mirror, folks. We're all wonderful, just like Reagan said. We're the shining city on the hill. I mean, what a clown he was. But he was elected, so what does that say? Anyway, but Trump's view is that everyone else is to blame. It's got these immigrants, so we're going to make Mexico build a wall. I mean, also, Japan's, they're freeloading on us, so we should pay more for their defense. Europeans, the same deal. Is against the well, look, sure. But who passed all these trade deals? Who didn't want to sign up to what Keynes wanted to do in Bretton Woods? Okay, it was America. It was Americans. Who signed all these? Clinton, for example. I mean, look at Hillary. Every damn economic policy that's gone wrong, many of it has gone wrong under Clinton. I mean, Brooksley Born, one lady was booted out because she warned against the derivatives. Glass-Steagall, George has just mentioned that, another disaster. And of course, signing this WTO, letting China WTO rules. I mean, it's astounding what sabotage has gone on. But the real thing that I think is what you have seen. The title of my next book, if I can finish it, is Sabotaging Democracy. I think that's the problem that's gone on, and Hank touched on it. These people get power, and after the power, the hierarchical structure takes over, and the little guys don't have a say in anything. Now, the idea of worker cooperatives was touched upon. Well, the biggest worker cooperative in England is John Lewis. That was a worker cooperative since 1928, 100,000 people. Now, in that organization, they have a house magazine, and you can ask any question, anonymously if you like, of anyone, even the top guy. Why are you doing this? And really, that's the essence of democracy. You should be able to ask anyone in power, especially those at the top, why are you doing this? What is your plan? And if you don't have that, really, you don't have democracy. And I don't think, especially in Europe now, basically the Germans in control. We have a commission which is unelected. And many people in Britain are very worried about that. Well, they're losing control of their democracy, which, as you know, 900 years ago, we said no kings that can't rule the roost, can't own everything. And gradually, but when we put these people in power, we must make them it must be answerable to the people. And the first rule I would put in any constitution is, okay, we give you, we elect you, you run for office, and therefore we put our trust and you must promise to do the best for us. Now, when you don't, when you cheat us, the punishment should be 10 times what a normal criminal would have to suffer. Because otherwise, then you don't have democracy, because these people will cheat. And unfortunately, what I've seen in America, especially over the last 30 years, is everyone wants to rip everybody else off, really. Very, very rare to get an honest dealing these days. And when you find it, it's rare. I don't care where you go, dentists, doctors, lawyers especially, anyone. First thing, you'll always get ripped off. And until you bring back honest dealing and democracy, I don't really think you have anything. Now, touching on another topic, really speaking, what's gone wrong is the financial system in this country and the economic system. And there's great debate about what we need to change. The Dodd-Frank thing is really a nothing. And so these criminals on Wall Street will go, they carry on stealing and cheating us, because there's no control over them. In fact, this bailing out the bank, I mean, that was one of the biggest crimes of the century, bailing out the bankers. They all should be in jail for what they did. It was colossal. It was fraud on a colossal scale. I mean, making things, as George said about in New Zealand, I mean, these things were fraud from start to finish. And there was a whole line of people, from real estate salesmen to mortgage companies, all the way up, bankers, the whole lot. I mean, they all knew it was crooked. And of course, such things, when you have this gigantic bubble, this financial bubble, it will always crash. Now, the new orthodoxy from the Fed, which keeps interest rates low, I mean, so low it's unbelievable, there's bound to be another crash caused by this. Now, now it's definitely going to happen. It's just a question of when. But no one talks about it. And when it does happen, my goodness, because there's nowhere to go now. Now, we've got the Tea Party lunatics who, won't spend a penny, so we don't have fiscal policy. Monetary policy out of the question, because we can't go lower with interest rates, so we're stuck. And of course, now America owns about $20 trillion overseas, so that's why it's being bought every day, something's being sold off. The real problem is the country's being sold out, you don't have democracy, you're in a real fix. And until people really know the real state of the country, or how it got there, I don't think they arguing about bathrooms and whatnot is just a diversion. It's completely stupid. I mean, to be candid. I mean, who cares? I mean, really, who's it going to corrupt? The other thing is, I think the Republican family values deal is finally gone, hopefully, but not in Texas, of course. They're worried about gays and abortions and the rest of it. The rest of the world has gone by that sort of thing, but not in Texas. So all I can hope is now, basically with Trump, I think he's Elizabeth Warren is giving a good speech about him. He's a total failure as a businessman, really. He'd done far better taking his hundreds of millions he got from his dad and putting it in a mutual fund, compared to what he did do. Hillary, I don't trust the Clintons one bit. I just think they're part of the establishment and so on. Bernie, Bernie, the problems, Bernie, are at a higher level than you've ever discussed. You've got to really go after and plan what you're going to do about the financial system, and you've got to tell the world what you're going to do about the world economic system, because it's a mess. We can't go on like this. The trade policy, you've got to say exactly what you're going to do. Because we're now getting on for nearly $1 trillion a year in trade deficit. Well, $1 trillion a year is a lot of money. A lot of businesses, houses, everything else being sold off. And So what are you going to do? Don't let's have concrete plans. I mean, when I was working with Xerox, I had to come up with a plan, okay? So government planning is not bad as long as it's done with the people with some brains, okay? I don't see much brains really in the government, but there is hope. I mean, Joe Sixpack is finally woken up and is angry and wants something done. They voted for Obama. He turned out to be a mainstream hack, I think. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But this electoral system of voting for presidents and then expecting them to do everything when you've got I don't think people seem to realize that the president has actually quite very little power. It's usually in the House. That's where the money is. And they're in control by a bunch of Tea Party freaks, it seems, who don't realize that you have to spend money in this world. Anyway, folks, that's it.
I'll be real short. Thanks for listening to me again. But I wanted to clarify, when I talk about the military, my biological father was a Marine, served in was in World War II. My stepfather, the only father I ever knew, was in Korea as a Marine. My uncle was a Marine in World War II and was a decorated war hero. And I had two ancestors that fought in the Alamo. So I'm just to show my ultimate and absolute respect for people, but for the troops and those people who do try to serve our country and go overseas and take bullets and risk their lives. So I want to be absolutely clear about that. And speaking of veterans, today, 5 veterans committed suicide. Tomorrow, 5 veterans will commit suicide, and the day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. And Trump and Hillary and Bernie are going to do nothing about it. Now, Trump's made some promises. Personally, I don't believe it, but I hope so. Hope there's something that's really going to change. So we'll see. And it's quite entertaining. We have to remember what George Carlin said, that none of us here are in the 1%. We're not in their club. So it's up to us to figure out what we want. Pat and I were on our way up here, and we've talked about it many times, and Hank and Maura and I have talked about it, John and everything else, but the taxes that we pay for our chains of slavery. Maybe there's a shift in our consciousness that needs to happen in the fact that we keep doing the same thing over and over again. Voting for this party or that party or this party or that party, and we expect a different result. Maybe we need to change the way we're looking at this thing. Maybe we need to unify, get the fluoride out of the water, take small little steps, even though the city council doesn't give a rat's behind what you think about anything. Or our Texas legislature. Okay, now if you want to donate a bunch of money, they might listen to you, but that's really all I wanted to say, is remind everybody that today, based on lies, 5 veterans committed suicide. Let's bring them home.
Yeah, I'll try to make this short, but I couldn't let it slip by. John, you're a very educated and interesting fellow, but I'm surprised that you weren't for Trump. Trump has been one of the few Republicans that has said the war in Iraq was a lie, and he's just about called George Bush a liar to his face. I'm surprised you weren't for him. But the thing about it is, you know, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to the facts. Let me give you just a couple of them. There were so many. Number one, Trump didn't inherit $100 or $300 million from his daddy. I don't know what Pocahontas thinks she knows, but she is the ultimate liar. She doesn't know her ass from a hole in the ground. Trump's father's had a net worth at his death of around $35 million. What's been made by that has been made by Donald Trump. You couldn't put that in any mutual fund and over that time interval gotten up to whatever it is that he's got. People don't like Trump because he's a no bullshitter. He's not like the Bushes, thank the good Lord. I could go on and on about that, but I won't. I don't think you want to hear it. But here's the House. You made another statement. The House is controlled by the Tea Party. That is the problem. It is not controlled by the Tea Party. It's controlled by the Bushes, the bankers, and the Republican establishment who probably don't give a damn. All they want to do is make more money, and they're in league with the with the Democrats. That's the problem with the House of Representatives. Now, the other thing is, a lot of you seem to believe in single-payer medical programs. This has just come out this week, so I don't have the guy's name in front of me, but I'll try to get it for next week, which is the week after next. But the man who originated the Canadian program finally said it is a failure, and he's getting out of it. So I don't know of any one of these single-payer medical plans that have worked. So that's another lie. No, it's not Ted Cruz, smart aleck. But they wasted a whole 2 or 3 generations. Saying that people don't have insurance coverage is one thing, but it is not the same thing as saying they don't get medical care. Every person in this country, even non-citizens, are legally entitled to go to any hospital and get treated. Now, the main thing that I wanted to talk about until these little nasty little points kept coming up was that how many of you know, do you know what whitewater, does anybody know what whitewater is in here? Most everybody? Most everybody's heard of whitewater. Okay, you should go into stand-up comedian work. I've often wondered, I mean, I've been in the real estate business, and I remember those little S&L finance deal mini perms where S&L lends the money to buy the land to do the development and you sell it off. But Whitewater was kind of in the middle of nowhere, and I never could quite get my hands around what Whitewater was all about. I was listening to a report on the radio this week, and a man has written another book, and again, since I only heard part of the report, can't remember his name, but Whitewater apparently was divided into lots. People would, let me take a little sidebar here. If you go to buy a house, you go down to the bank or the savings and loan, you apply for a mortgage, unless you're a trust fund kid and have all the cash. But, so, you know, there's another type of financing called owner financing, where if you want to buy something, if you want to sell something, and you can't get a financial institution for whatever reason to finance it, you ask the purchasers to put down 10% and make payments for so long. And then it becomes theirs, called owner financing. It's quite prevalent in raw land deals where there's not a real good market. Here apparently is what was going on in Whitewater, according to this author. They were selling lots to people, but it was owner finance lots. And the lots somebody would come in and buy a lot, maybe not even make a down payment, and they would pay so much per month according to the contract. But if they missed one payment, it was foreclosed on. And there's no litigation, there's no contesting. The land goes back to the original owner. Original owner keeps the money. No fuss, no fuss. This is the perfect mechanism that looks legal on the surface to have payoffs. This is how the Clintons used a obscure piece of land in a remote piece of Arkansas to supposedly sell lots to people who wanted to pay them bribery money. That's what Whitewater was all about, and that's just the beginning of Her Royal Highness Hillary Rodham Clinton and her perverted husband in all their criminal deals. And that's before you get to any deaths. So that's who might be our president next time.
Any questions about how pipe water works? Happy to answer.
Oh, come on up here.
Yeah, actually, I was going to clarify what I said about the White House. Yes, it really was the Tea Party that stopped spending in the House.
They didn't
Remember,
stop spending, that's the problem.
well, they clamped down. Remember, you know, almost the entire wing of the Republican Party signed the Grover Northwest statement. They couldn't raise taxes. They actually closed down the government, right? They've got as far as actually saying to the government, we're going to renege on our interest payments, okay? Now, they came close to that. Then they had this deal where they were going to cut spending, military 50%, civil spending 50%. Remember that the financial cliff was going to happen, okay? And so, yes, the Tea Party faction had such good, yeah, they were only a small faction, okay, but they damn near, and in fact, succeeded actually in shutting down the government almost. I mean, really, and that's so. And in actual fact, the credit rating of the U.S. was dropped a notch based on that, okay? Because when you threaten you don't pay your bills and you're a country, it's a fairly serious thing, and that was the Tea Party. Now, you know, because, oh, we can't, you know, and they, you know, what Boner said, well, oh, the people are now earning less and they can't pay their bills and they must live with their means, and so the country must do the same. We don't have the money to spend anymore. Well, on a macro level, that's a nonsense economics, okay? Economics 101 would tell you that a country is not the same as a family. You certainly must overspend when you're certainly coming out of recession. And that was a problem with the Tea Party faction. You know, they're economic ignoramuses, most of them. All they want to do is cut the size of the government, stop spending, and it's a smokescreen for that ideology, okay? That's what it is, okay? And really, we should have come out of this recession a lot faster had they had spending go up. Now, I won't talk about the modern monetary policy, but one plan is that the government, you know, we do away with the Federal Reserve spending the money and printing the money, and we have the Treasury. The government can fund itself, actually. So, you know, there are lots of ways to go in economics, but certainly I would say the Tea Party had no clue. It actually damaged the country a lot. You know, we talked about productivity, about jobs being lost. Part of that, we've not had good productivity growth. I mean, the Federal Reserve gave money to the banks, okay, who were supposed to fund businesses. It didn't. It sent a great deal of that money back to the Fed and collected interest on it. Yeah. And they collected something like $40 billion just by giving the money, getting money given to them by the Fed and putting it back in the Fed and getting interest. And so what this country needs is a plan to reinvest in itself. In fact, reinvest in its people, its businesses, and so on. And until it gets that plan together, okay, it's doomed. I mean, you know, China is now, you know, it's dumping steel on the world's market. It put steel companies around the world out of business, and nothing's done. Because somehow we have to pander to this wonderful Chinese market that's supposedly there, but doesn't really exist. And so, you know, look, the Tea Party, in my judgment, are just poison, and they're economic ignoramuses. And they, you know, the government has to live with its means because we as my 5 kids and me and the wife, we have to live with it. You know, that's a nonsense economic proposition from, you know, a priori. Yeah, that's the message. It's so simple that the simpletons public believe it. Same thing in Britain. It's the austerity, and all over Europe. That's what we've had. That's why Greece is underwater. I could go on a lot about that, but yes, in my judgment, the Tea Party has done terrible damage to this country because it's It's ideology, which is a phony, fake ideology. And Ted Cruz, if you have thank goodness he's been booted out. He was poison, that guy, and he really was Luther on steroids. So yeah, you know. Anyway, but yeah.
Can I respond?
Yeah, they're responding.
Let me get you. Okay, all right. Okay.
Hey, Tom, you don't need to have me go up there and tie it together. Because everybody-
Well, again, I think you're either misguided or misinterpreting the facts. Countries do have to live within their means or they fail. Look what happened to Weimar Republic, Germany. You're correct in one thing, and that is that the Obama administration caused the Fed to lend money to banks, but then because of the Obama bureaucrats, the banks were so afraid of being put out of business, audited, and declared non-functional that the only thing that they would invest in was federal bonds. And as someone else said earlier, I think it was George, the actual purpose of a bank is to recycle the money. They didn't do that. That wasn't because of the Tea Party. That was because of the Obama Party and their effing bureaucrats. The Tea Party has never had the power. The reason that the Tea Party rose up and kicked John Bonehead Boehner out and a few other people is because they would not reduce spending. There is not one year you can find when the spending was less in a successive year than it was in a previous year. That's the second big complaint against the House of Representatives is they do have the ability to cut off spending and they don't use it for reasons that are not clear. And that is not the Tea Party. The Tea Party are the only people who are halfway sane in this country. The Keynesian people are the ones who are driving us into national bankruptcy. $19-20 trillion. When George Bush came in, the debt was around 5 or 6 trillion. When he went out, it was about 10 or 11 trillion. When Obama came in, it was 10 or 11. Now it's 19 going to 20. That is, as you know, is an accelerating curve. If the interest rates were not low, instead of the interest payments being 300 billion, it would be $1 trillion. We would have no way to make those payments. The debt is not 20 billion overseas. It's about a third internal. There's no money in the Social Security $2.8 billion trust fund because starting with fabulous Lyndon Johnson, they put in federal IOUs. The trust fund where when you fly, you pay money into a trust fund to buy air control. Might keep updating the air control system. Well, there's no money in that because they borrowed all of that. That may be just a technical point, but the people, if you say Cruz is an idiot, well, then everybody else in the country is. There were 17 people that started out, and he was number two. Everybody else got wiped out. All these so-called great guys like the Shrubs and I don't know, whoever the hell is in the Republican Party, John Kasich, the little dodo, but the people that are standing are the people who have convinced the people in a democratic system that they are representing the views of the people. You may not agree with them, and you're perfectly entitled not to agree with them, but it sounds like in your world, you want to have a dictatorial oligarchy who makes all these decisions. Doesn't work that way in this country. The people are fulminating up from the bottom, and they're about to kick out the patricians. And God help Donald Trump, and I hope he flushes them all down the toilet.
Whoever gets to the Oval Office this time is going to get there with an empty vault, empty coffers. We are, in fact, in the death of the Keynesian system now. And the petrodollar is dying. The world is no longer going along with the US dollar as the reserve currency. There are so many changes going on in the financial markets that it's almost a day by day trying to keep track of it. There's some very rapid change. You haven't seen nothing yet. I mean, we're in a real storm, financially, international finances. And to be blaming the Tea Party, we've had this discussion before on who are the neocons and who is the Tea Party. The Tea Party stands for taxed enough already. And people forget that because it's become a label. When I was at some of the first Tea Party meetings, and I'm not a joiner, don't call me a Tea Party member, it was at least a third Democrat until the Republican establishment tried to move in and take over and drive those Democrats out and make it a Republican establishment movement, which there was an attempt, they partly succeeded. But then there are the neocons. What is the definition of a neocon? New conservatives? These are because this whole lineage of Trotskyite Democrats, actually, Trotskyite liberals, they were trying to make the Democratic Party the war party, and they failed. So they came over and decided that the conservatives would make a better war party, and now they're afflicting the conservatives, and they have the conservative Republican establishment by the throat, and they have had it for quite a while. And if we're talking Tea Party and we are not talking neocon, and you're talking about who's really calling the shots, you're totally missing it. But we can have this argument another time. I don't know how much it goes to this talking.
I think I'm the last one standing at last. Anyway, I gotta thank our speaker for putting on a great job here tonight. He, out of nothing, hey, look what you did, George. It's really terrific. My background, I was a labor union representative for 20 years, and I saw a lot of things happen. I was a negotiator. I used to learn a lot of rules, learn a lot of how to get things done. But what I see today in our society is not good. We've got the best Congress money can buy. That's the problem. We have corporations controlling the Congress. I ran for Congress 4 times. First time I took in $100,000 in campaign contributions, mostly from unions. Took 38% of the vote running against a Republican. And the second time, he was chairman of the House International Relations Committee. He ushered through the resolution to give Bush the authority to go to war in Iraq, based on the supposition he needed that authority to strengthen his hand negotiating with the UN. Well, I was screaming my head off that Congress declares war, not the president. You don't give him that authority. He might use it. Well, they did use it. 6 months later, we went to war, and a lot of Democrats egg on their face, including Hillary, for voting to give him the authority to go to war. Well, that's why we ended up in Iraq. And nobody listened, but something else happened. They all went to Gephardt in Washington and said, where should we send the money? And he said, send it to open races, send it to incumbents, don't send anything to any challengers. Challengers haven't got a dime since before the year 2000, nothing. I ran against Jeb Henserling here in Texas twice. Couldn't get 10 cents. Why? Because I'm a challenger. Challengers get nothing. So challengers can't win elections. That's what's happened. We get the best Congress money can buy, and that's the truth. Their corporations are controlling the Congress, and if they vote against the corporations, they're out. They knock them out in the primary. They get no money. If they vote for the corporation, they get the money. In fact, if you look, there's even documentaries on it where they spend all their time raising money. Adlai Stevenson was a senator from Illinois, 1 term, and he quit. He wouldn't run again. Everybody was mad at him. Why won't you run? He said, I got to spend 70% of my time raising money. He says, get somebody else. That's not why I'm here. I'm here to represent you, not to be spending all my time raising money. So that's what's happened. That's why we have the problem we do in our Congress today. And that's why nothing gets done. And that's why it doesn't matter what happens. And even if you advocate throwing the whole Congress out and putting somebody else in, they'll be controlled by money when they get through with them. So that's, the staffers will run the Congress. So that's part of what you're up against. So what's the solution? My view is that what will Congress vote for? They might vote to have free airtime. the last 90 days of a general election, which I think they do in England, something to that effect. And if they voted for that, they get to keep the money they raised it for re-election. They'd vote for that. Why? There's no challenge. There's no record of a challenger beating an incumbent since before the year 2000. I know that. So they'll vote for. They could be cajoled and everything else into voting for it. Once they put it in, there'll be some changes. Some challengers will beat some incumbents. And when that happens, the Congress will represent the people to do the electing instead of the people buying their vote in Washington. And when that happens, then you can put tariffs on corporations overseas and you get your jobs back here. Because if you put a tariff on Apple, they produce everything in China. They don't produce anything here. They sell it here. But if you don't have a basic, if you don't have a representation of, if you don't have a basic economy where you're manufacturing, you don't have an economy. You're going to lose it. You're going to end up like England. You're going to end up, this whole country's going to the dogs, and that's what's going to happen. And you're going to be, what's that?
That reminds me of Donald Trump.
Well, anyway, that's the whole point. And if you talk about elections, now that you mentioned it, yeah, generally in an election you have a choice between someone you don't like and someone you can't stand. Remember that. And so I always used to say, vote for. I'm the guy you don't like. Vote for me. But anyway, that's the whole point. And so if you stay home and you don't vote, you're going to let the guy. It's a vote for the guy that you can't stand. Believe it. That's how it is. So don't stay home. Make sure you vote. And anyway, but I got off track here.
You did good.
I did fair. Good is yet to come. Anyway, the real problem, we need to put tariffs on corporations. That can't happen until we get the Congress representing the people. I know that. And if we put tariffs on corporations, we'll have jobs here. And then they'll produce, you got manufacturing, selling, everything else, you're better off. You don't have to have standing armies all over the world to protect your perceived vital interests. That's another part of your problem. And that's why you're going broke. So anyway, that's how I see it, and that's what has to be done. And that can be done. I know it can be done. But anyway, that's what I believe. That's what I wrote to Bernie. I wrote him several letters. He hasn't answered any of them, but I saw him here in July.
He told me he said he'll be writing you soon.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. Anyway, but you have a choice. Anyway, I personally, I'm for Bernie. I think he'd be a good president, but and I can't stand Trump. Well, he's a guy I can't stand, believe me, because this guy, he talks off the top of his head. He comes out with stuff that, building walls is not going to solve any problems. We know that. He wants to renege on our debts to other countries. He thinks it's a corporate game. It doesn't work. Everybody else runs south on you. They'll get scared to death, and your economy will collapse. You'll be like the Weimar Republic. Believe it, that can happen. So don't let it happen. So anyway, I better shut up while I'm ahead and let our speaker get up here and finish this off.
I don't know whether I can do with all the things I've heard tonight.
Well,
my head is ready to explode.
George, you did it. You brought this on. It's your fault.
I look out there and most of the people have left. And I really don't blame them. The thing is, I was going to talk about Hank. I'm proud of Hank's activism. I'm going to tell you a quick story. I've been going to the Garland City Council meetings since last August. And me and my friend Jack, which is running for House District 112, we just sit there in front, and we're about from here to Tom away from the City Council. And anyway, they really want to know what the hell we're doing there, because to a certain point we hadn't said anything. And this one lady councilman or councilwoman comes up and she said, "You guys look like the happiest guys I've ever met. When I was a little girl," she said, "I used to watch the elderly gentlemen with their smile wrinkles, and she said, and I just admired them." And she says, "And it still hasn't happened to me." She's in her late 50s, perhaps. So I told her, "Well, perhaps you're not old enough yet." So anyway, I finally did talk at City Council, and I got my 3 minutes. and it was on the TPP. Try to put the TPP in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But I accomplished it when he told me you got 30 seconds left. And I put it in, and I was asking them to make a resolution opposing the TPP from City Council. And the next week I came in there and the city attorney said, what other kind of conspiracies you gonna talk on tonight? And I really thought about John and some of the rest of you, which I could have brought you guys with me, and we could really talk conspiracy. So anyway, I want to tell you one thing, that I am one of the founders of Bernie Sanders' Super PAC. And if you go out, there's a little Corolla out there in the back window. It has founding member Bernie Sanders Super PAC. I gave him $15. And they sent me, and I do send them money now. Now Bernie is what you call funded by the people. 6.5 million people at an average of $27 apiece have sent him money. I send him money each month. Or maybe it's every other month. No, I do. Every month he gets my $15 whether he needs it or not. But I think that's where we see right now Trump has been self-funding. Everybody agreed they love that. Watch what's happening. He's turning, and he's going to get his money from all the PACs he can. And the only person that is really funded by the people is Bernie Sanders. And I really think he's done a great job. Thank you. Oh, really, Tom, putting me on the spot like you did, I loved it.
Brilliant! Bravo!
Take care, my friend.
Yeah, well, you're just
Well, that's it for tonight, and we stay up till 10:30, so you can talk to our speaker here. And see you next week. Or next week, next week we will not have a meeting, so we'll see you in 2 weeks.
No way.